Advantages to property tax is that it is not easily moved to escape taxation as an income might be. Property tax is its stability. It provides a steady and regular income for taxing agents. Numerous limitations has negative impact on the value of housing. It tends to discourage rehabilitation and upkeep because both of these tend to raise the value of property and therefore its taxes. The tax is often deciding factor in location of businesses and industry and is likely not applied to everyone equally. A progressive tax is one that the tax according to the ability to pay. The more wealthy one has in property, the more one pays. Regressive taxes, such as sales and use taxes, are those that affect low-income groups disproportionately. There is some evidence that supports that some people in the lowest income group pay a much higher proportion of their income and property taxes. Property taxes are calculated on the basis of assessed valuation, so the districts with higher assessed valuation per pupil is in a better position to provide a quality education than one is assessed at a lower value per pupil. Money is referred to state aid, and within most states, all or major portion of this money is used to help achieve equality of opportunity. The main source of tax revenue for states have been classified as Department of Commerce into four groups: sales and gross receipt tax, income tax, license, and miscellaneous. Sales and gross receipt taxes include taxes on general sales, motor fuels, alcohol, insurance, amusements. Income tax include both individual and corporations. Licenses include those on motor vehicles, corporations, occupations, vehicle operating, hunting, and fishing. Miscellaneous classifications include property taxes, taxes on extraction of minerals, death, and gift taxes. Sales and income taxes are lucrative sources of revenue for most states. It's easily collected as people buy goods from stores. Sales tax is collected bit by bit. And state income tax can be withheld from wages as people earn money from their work. Gambling is an indirect source of revenue in the sense that it is not seen as a direct tax on citizens. Instead, the revenue comes through a tax on the games people are playing. State perspective on taxation and education. The earliest court cases before 1989 were based on equal protection challenges and questions about unequal resource allocations. California Supreme Court ruled that the system of school financing in California was unconstitutional, but it did not forbid the use of property taxes as long as the system of finance was neutral in the distribution of all resources. Since 1989, the plaintiffs have changed their arguments from questions about equality to questions about adequacy. The question has become one of asking whether or not the state is meeting established standards. In Montana, Helena Elementary School District versus state in 1989, the state constitution article mandates the state establish an educational system that will develop full educational potential of each person. In 1990, the court delayed the efforts of the decision to allow legislation time to enact a new financing system. Students have been approached to sell advertising space. Billboards around athletic fields or in gymnasiums, soft drinks and fast food, advertising on school buses, advertising at the bottom of the school district's homepage, placing ads on high school cafeteria tables, receiving profits from restricting brands of soft drinks and other snacks and dispensing machines, corporate sponsorships for music and sports programs. Student fees have been expanded, especially for non-core subjects and extracurricular activities. Fees for enrollment, gym clothes, yearbooks, lab equipment, and fees for student parking. These fees can generate a few thousand to 300,000 annually, and in over 4 years it could be, for a large high school, $1 million in 4 years. Fundraising, bake sales, booster clubs, pass out cards to receive deals at restaurants or other places of businesses. In one instance, California students took home a form that their parents could sign to switch to a long-distance telephone carrier. The school parent-teacher association will receive 10% off their long-distance payments from each family. Would generate about $500,000 for 1 year. Or installing cell phone towers on top of the school. Many schools have done bingo for fundraising or 50-50 tickets at athletic events. Taxing marijuana. In Colorado in 2014, sales accounted for $63 million in tax revenue, $13 million in license and fees. In 2016, the cannabis market in Colorado exceeded $1 billion. Some have estimated the legalization of marijuana in more states could be worth $40 to $100 billion in additional revenue for schools. State aid for education exists largely for three reasons. One, the state has the primary responsibility for education to its citizens. Two, the financial ability of local school districts to support education varies widely. And three, personal wealth is now less related to real property than it once was. State aid can be either general or category. General aid can be used for recipients of school districts as it desires. Category aid is earmarked for a specific purpose. General aid is often administered through a program that funds each school district up to a foundation level of education required per pupil. Category aid may include, for example, money for transportation, vocational education, driver's education, and programs for children with disabilities. How state foundation programs work. The total length of each bar represents the foundation level of education required per pupil expressed in dollars. Each school district must put forth the same minimal local effort to finance its schools. This effort could be, for example, a qualifying tax rate that produces the local share of the foundation level. State foundation programs' limited effectiveness. The effectiveness of using various state foundation programs to bring about fiscal equalization has been limited. A major limitation is that the foundation established is frequently far below the actual expenditure or far below the level needed to provide adequate education opportunities. The federal government's role in education. Under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, education is seen as a function of the states. Although the states have primary responsibility for education, historically, the schools have been operated at a local level. During the past 60 years, the federal government has assumed an ever-increasing involvement in education. In the 60s and 70s, the interest and involvement was linked to national security and solving social problems. In the early 90s, the rationale was based on economic competitiveness. In the late 90s, the focus shifted to standards and testing as well as concerns about funding of infrastructure of schools. No Child Left Behind in 2002 accelerated the involvement of the federal government in education. Many of the schools on Native American reservations are financed and maintained through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA, of the Department of Interior. There is about 25 of these schools that have become what are called contract schools, in which the tribe determines the program and the staff, but the BIA supports the school financially. Elementary Secondary Education Act, ESSA. The statute was a part of the Great Society Initiative to address poverty. It provided funds for a number of activities, including targeted funds for schools with many low-income students. An important assumption was that the support schools would help students become more successful and contribute as adults in society. Policymakers have been concerned with the quality of education, have used the lever of federal dollars to set up expectations for states, school districts, schools, and teachers. With each reauthorization, the scope of the bill has expanded. But the major intent over the years for ESSA has been to increase the success of poor or minority students. No Child Left Behind. Two major proposals of No Child Left Behind were to raise student achievement across the board and to eliminate the achievement gap among students from different backgrounds. NCLB, No Child Left Behind, required each state to set minimal qualifications for being eligible for a license to teach. Requirements include taking and passing a licensure test, having a concentration of courses in the content areas to be taught, and have at least a bachelor's degree. The primary criterion is student performance on standardized tests. In addition, instead of average test scores for all students being used to evaluate a school, students' test scores had to be desegregated into subgroups: economically disadvantaged, major racial or ethnic groups, students with disabilities, and ELL students, English language learners. CLB legislation placed heavy demands on teachers, schools, school districts, and states. There is positive outcomes and negative outcomes. A major important outcome of the requirement to desegregate test scores has been that schools now strive to increase test scores for all students. No longer can expectations for achievement by minorities, special needs, or ELL students be lower than anybody else. Bubble kids are those who score a few points below proficient level. By targeting them, it hoped that on the next testing they would score at or above the cut line. One consequence was that students who had passed received less attention. It mandated that students' performance in the year 2001-2002 school year was to serve as the performance baseline. In each subsequent year, there was to be improvement in the test score so that by the school year 2013-2014, all students would be proficient. In the fall of 2011, President Barack Obama initiated a process by which states could apply for a waiver for some elements of NCLB. States that received waivers had to address several elements: adopt standards for college and career readiness, establish a new accountability system, implement purposeful ways of improving learning for ELL students and SE students, develop an education evaluation system based on measures to improve teacher effectiveness. CLB require annual testing for grades 3 through 8 in 11th grade in math, reading, language, arts, and 3 times in science by grade 12th. Annual report cards were required. SINOL schools must be listed on the report card. Also, school districts must make available to parents on request the following information about their child's classroom teacher: whether the teacher met state qualifications, whether the teacher is teaching under emergency, the bachelor's degree of the teacher, whether the child is provided services by a paraprofessional. In 2015, President Obama signed the newest reauthorization of ESSA. Major changes were accountability plans. Each state had to develop its own plan. Accountability system. All schools must contain 3 academic indicators. Low-performing students. States need to identify and intervene on the bottom 5% of schools. Testing. Test and read and math grades 3 through 8 and once in high school. Standards. States must adopt challenging standards. And teachers, elimination of highly qualified teacher requirement and a waiver that required the use of student outcome in teacher evaluation. Important applications of technology is planning class schedules for students and teachers. Important application of technology is planning class schedules for students. In the old days, the principal would use chalkboards and sketch out and rearrange. Now they can use computer programs for this. More significant use of technology, one that teachers experience weekly, if not daily, is compiling, analyzing, and displaying student data. More schools have a school improvement team or response to intervention team that meets once or twice a week or once a month. In the meeting, the progress of all students who have been identified as in need of extra help is reviewed. Technology has been used to score and store the various tests and assessments for each student. During the meeting, the data for each student are displayed on the screen. Each student's progress is reviewed, and the team reaches an agreement on which instruction and intervention. Technology is also important at the district level. One of the most obvious uses is computing and managing the budget. Also, they can use to manage heating and cooling, develop school bus schedules, keep personal records, and payroll. Most school districts have student information systems which allow all test scores to be compiled and analyzed at the district office. District administrators can review how students are performing across the district for each school and even for each type of student.